I parked my 15-year-old Camry in the lot behind the Allen house and sat there for a minute, engine ticking as it cooled in the Texas heat.
Through the windshield, I could see couples in evening wear gliding toward the entrance like they were floating on air. The men wore tailored suits that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. The women had on dresses that shimmered under the venue's exterior lights, their jewelry catching the last rays of the September sunset. I adjusted my tie, the navy one I'd worn to Carol's funeral 8 years ago, and picked up the envelope from the passenger seat. The weight of it felt significant in my hand, heavy with promise and hope. $3 million. Converted to a cashier's check 2 days earlier at the downtown branch of First National Bank. The teller had looked at me twice, asked me to confirm the amount, then called her manager over. They'd treated me like royalty after that, offering me water, asking if I needed an escort to my car. This was everything I'd saved across 4 decades of running Clark Construction. Every early morning, every late night, every weekend spent reviewing bids and managing crews. Every penny I'd put away, instead of buying myself something nice. I'd planned to split it between Della and her sister Maya eventually, but Maya had her own family now, her own stability. Her husband Marcus was a surgeon, and they lived in a beautiful home in California with their 3 kids. They were doing just fine. Della needed it more, or so I'd thought. She and Leroy had been struggling to get established. They rented a small apartment in South Austin, and Leroy's tech startup hadn't taken off the way he'd promised it would. Della worked as a marketing coordinator, making decent money but nothing spectacular. They were living paycheck to paycheck, stressed about bills, talking about wanting to buy a house, but never having enough for a down payment. So I'd decided this would be their wedding gift, their fresh start, the nest egg that would let them buy that house, start a family without financial stress hanging over them. Maybe even let Leroy finally get his business off the ground with proper funding. I walked through the carved double doors into a world that smelled like money and success. The foyer of the Allen house was all marble floors and crystal chandeliers, with fresh orchid arrangements on every surface. I could hear champagne corks popping somewhere deeper in the building and the murmur of expensive conversation. The catering staff moved like synchronized dancers in their crisp white shirts and black vests. Through an archway, I could see the main ballroom where the reception would be held. Ice sculptures shaped like swans sat on tables draped in ivory silk. The centerpieces were enormous. White roses, calla lilies, and something silver and architectural that I couldn't even name. I tried to count the guests already mingling with cocktails, but lost track somewhere, around 150, maybe more. The envelope crinkled slightly as I tightened my grip. My palms were sweating. Della stood near the entrance to the ballroom in her white gown, and for just a moment, she looked like she had when she was 5 years old, playing dress-up in Carol's old wedding veil. My little girl. Except she wasn't little anymore, and the woman standing there bore only a passing resemblance to the daughter I thought I knew. Leroy stood beside her in a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been painted on. Probably custom-made. I'd heard him bragging about his tailor at the rehearsal dinner, some exclusive place in downtown Austin where they measured you for 30 minutes and charged $4,000 for a single suit. I approached them, working up something close to a smile. My heart was pounding, but I told myself it was just normal father-of-the-bride nervousness. "Della, Leroy," I said. "Congratulations. I brought you something." My daughter's eyes flicked toward me, then away, like she'd spotted a stain on the marble floor, like I was an embarrassment she'd been hoping to avoid. "Just put it somewhere, Dad." Her voice was clipped, dismissive. She didn't even look at the envelope. Leroy didn't even turn around. He was already scanning the room for someone more important, someone worth his time. His eyes passed right over me like I was invisible. I stood there for another few seconds, the envelope heavy in my hand, waiting for, what? A thank you? A hug? Some acknowledgement that I was her father. But Della had already turned away, laughing at something one of her bridesmaids said, and Leroy was shaking hands with a man in an expensive watch. I moved toward the reception area, where elegant name cards directed guests to their tables. I found mine. Table 17, in the back corner of the ballroom, partially hidden by a decorative column. I had to walk past 16 other tables to get there, past the prime seating near the head table, past the tables for immediate family and close friends, past even the tables for casual acquaintances. Table 17 was where you put people you had to invite but didn't really want there. I sat down alone. The centerpiece was taller than my head. More white roses and that mysterious silver thing that seemed designed specifically to block my view of the head table. The other place settings at my table had names I didn't recognize. Based on the cards, I'd be sitting with some of Leroy's distant cousins who were driving in from Houston. I picked up my water glass and took a sip, trying to swallow down the lump forming in my throat. Dinner service started an hour later, after the ceremony. The wedding itself had been beautiful, I supposed. Della had cried, happy tears, I hoped. The officiant had said lovely things about love and commitment and building a life together. I'd watched from my seat in the third row, not the first where fathers traditionally sat, and tried to feel proud instead of hurt. Waiters in white gloves delivered plates I didn't touch. Some kind of beef with a reduction sauce, roasted vegetables arranged artistically, a garnish I couldn't identify. The couple from Houston next to me tried to make conversation, but I could barely focus on their words. Up at the head table, Della and Leroy held court, their laughter carrying across the ballroom. I watched my daughter smile at strangers, that practiced expression she'd perfected over the years. The one she used when she wanted something, when she was performing rather than feeling. Then Leroy stood up. He had a microphone in his hand and a glass of champagne in the other. His face was already flushed from drinking. He'd had at least 3 glasses during dinner, probably more during the cocktail hour. I want to make a toast, he announced, and the room quieted down, everyone turning to give him their attention. The first few toasts were standard. He thanked the guests for coming. He praised Della, calling her his beautiful bride and his better half. He thanked his parents for their support. Normal wedding speech stuff. But then his tone shifted, got looser, more pointed. His words started to slur just slightly at the edges. You know what I love about tonight? He said, gesturing with his champagne glass in a wide arc that nearly sloshed liquid onto the white tablecloth. Everyone here gets it. You all understand quality, class, knowing your place in the world. He paused for effect, and a few people chuckled uncertainly. You ever notice how some guys just don't fit anywhere? Like, read the vibe, man. More laughter now, growing stronger. I felt it land on me like a spotlight, even though he hadn't looked in my direction yet. I mean, some people never learn. They show up where they're not wanted, wearing clothes from, 1990? The laughter was louder now. Genuine. People were enjoying this. I looked down at my suit, the same one I'd worn to Carol's funeral. Yes, but it was clean and pressed. It was the best I had. And it was perfectly appropriate. But apparently not appropriate enough for Leroy's wedding. But hey, at least they try, right? Leroy continued. And now he did glance in my direction, just for a second. Just long enough for everyone to follow his gaze. Bless their hearts for trying. The laughter was everywhere now. I could feel eyes on me. The couple from Houston had gone quiet, suddenly very interested in their dessert plates. I set down my water glass carefully. My hand was steady, which surprised me. Inside, something was breaking. But on the outside, I was still. Leroy continued for another minute, each joke another knife. Jokes about people who couldn't tell when they weren't welcome. Jokes about guys who drove old cars and didn't understand the difference between a good suit and a cheap one. Jokes about people who were a little too proud of their blue-collar roots. And Della sat there beside him, not laughing. I'll give her that much. Her smile had gone tight, performative, but she wasn't stopping him either. She just sat there, letting her new husband tear me apart in front of 150 people. I stood up. The room didn't notice at first. I was too far back, too invisible. Just the guy in the old suit at table 17. I walked between tables, past conversations and clinking silverware, the envelope still in my hand. A few people glanced up as I approached the head table, curiosity replacing amusement on their faces. Della saw me coming. Her expression shifted from that fake smile to something harder, colder. Her eyes went wide, then narrowed. Leroy stopped mid-sentence, suddenly aware that I was standing right there. "I wanted to give you this personally," I started, holding out the envelope. "Dad," Della's voice cut across the ballroom like shattering glass. "Get out of here. You're ruining the celebration. Just leave." The room went silent. 150 people stopped eating, drinking, breathing. All eyes were on me now, not because of Leroy's jokes, but because of this moment. I stood there for 3 seconds, maybe 4. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, but my face stayed blank. I reached inside the envelope, felt the check's edge. It was thick, expensive paper, the kind of paper they use for important documents. "All right, Della," I said. My voice came out calm, measured, like I was discussing the weather or commenting on the centerpieces. "Then you won't need this." "What?" She waved her hand dismissively, like she was shooing away a fly. "Just go already." I tore the envelope vertically. The sound seemed incredibly loud in that silent room. Then I rotated the pieces 90 degrees and tore horizontally. 4 pieces now. 4 pieces of cardstock envelope, and between them, the torn check. I let them fall, one by one, watching them flutter to the marble floor like autumn leaves, like nothing, like trash. Then I turned and walked toward the exit. My steps were even, unhurried. I wasn't running away. I was simply leaving. There's a difference. Behind me, I heard a chair scrape back. Someone gasped, "Wait, is this?" A woman's voice, high and shocked. "Oh my God, these numbers." 3 million? Another voice, a man this time. "Did that say 3 million? The ballroom erupted. Chairs scraped everywhere now. Voices overlapped in chaos and confusion. People were scrambling for the pieces of the check on the floor. "Dad!" Della's scream cut through everything. "Wait! Dad, wait!" I didn't turn around. I pushed through the double doors into the cool evening air, keys already in my hand. Behind me, footsteps pounded on marble. Someone was running after me. "Mr. Clark, sir!" A man's voice. Not Leroy. Maybe one of the groomsmen. "Please wait." I reached my Camry, unlocked it with fingers that were finally starting to shake now that I was alone, and climbed in. Through the rearview mirror, I could see 2 figures burst through the Allen house doors. Della was still in her wedding gown, hiked up in her hand so she could run. Leroy was right behind her, his tie loose, his face red. I started the engine and backed out of my parking space. They were running toward me now, waving their arms, shouting. I could see Della's mouth forming the word "Dad" over and over again. I drove away. I drove away from my daughter's wedding, from the $3 million in torn paper on the marble floor, from the shocked guests and the ice sculptures and the life I'd thought I was giving her. I drove home in silence. No radio, just the sound of tires on asphalt and my own breathing. When I got home, my small house in a quiet neighborhood, the house Carol and I had bought 40 years ago. I sat in my truck in the driveway for a long time. The porch light was on, triggered by the motion sensor. Moths were gathering around it. I thought about Carol, about how disappointed she would be. Not in me. I knew that instinctively, but in Della. Carol had always worried that Della was too focused on appearances, too concerned with status. "She needs to learn what really matters," Carol had said once, near the end when the cancer had made her brutally honest. "She needs to learn before it's too late." I'd thought the lesson would come naturally, through life and experience. I hadn't realized I'd have to teach it myself, in the worst possible way. My phone started ringing as soon as I walked inside. Della's name on the screen. I declined the call. It rang again immediately. declined again. By the time I'd changed out of my suit and into jeans and a t-shirt, I had 17 missed calls. I turned my phone off and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up to 47 missed calls. Not just from Della and Leroy, but from numbers I didn't recognize. Della's bridesmaids, probably. Maybe some of the guests. Maybe even the wedding planner, though I couldn't imagine why she'd need to talk to me. I made coffee, read the newspaper, and thought about what came next. They were living in my house. That was the first clear thought I had. The Westlake property that Carol and I had worked so hard to afford, the house where I'd raised both my daughters, the house with Carol's rose garden in the backyard, and the tire swing I'd hung from the oak tree when the girls were little. I'd given it to Della and Leroy after their first wedding. This was actually her second marriage, something that should have been a warning sign. I'd signed the deed over, asking nothing in return, just a father wanting to help his daughter get established in life. They'd been living there rent-free for 2 years. That was going to change. I turned my phone back on and called my attorney, Stephen Wright. He'd handled Carol's estate and various business matters for Clark Construction over the years. Good man, thorough, not cheap, but worth every penny. "Stephen," I said when he answered, "I need to discuss property law, specifically eviction procedures." "Robert, good to hear from you. What's going on?" I told him about the wedding. Not all the details, I didn't need to bare my soul, but enough that he understood the situation. When I finished, there was a long pause. "So you want to evict your daughter and son-in-law from the Westlake property?" "I do." "You're sure about this?" "It's going to be ugly, Robert. Family matters always are." "I'm sure." Another pause. "All right, I'll draw up the paperwork. In Texas, you'll need to provide them with a notice to vacate. Since there's no written lease agreement and they're not paying rent, they're considered tenants at will. You'll need to give them 30 days' notice. Do it. And Robert, once you start this process, there's no going back without looking weak. You need to be committed. I'm committed." The notice to vacate was delivered 3 days later by a process server. I wasn't there to see their faces when they received it, but I could imagine. Della probably cried. Leroy probably raged. My phone started ringing again. This time I answered. "How could you do this?" Della's voice was raw from crying. "Dad, this is our home." "It's my home," I said calmly. "I gave it to you out of kindness. You repaid that kindness by humiliating me at your wedding." "That was Leroy. He was drunk. He didn't mean—" "You sat there and let it happen, Della. You told me to leave. You called me an embarrassment in front of everyone you know." "I was stressed. It was my wedding day." "Yes, it was, and I was bringing you $3 million. Silence. Long enough that I thought she might have hung up. "You tore up $3 million, she finally said, her voice small. "What kind of person does that?" "The kind who knows the value of respect. You have 30 days, Della. I suggest you start looking for apartments." I hung up. The next 4 weeks were a study in chaos and desperation. Della and Leroy tried everything. They called constantly, showing up at my office, at my house, even at the construction sites where I was still doing consultations for Clark Construction. Leroy confronted me in my office parking garage one morning, coffee in hand, trying the reasonable approach. "Robert, man to man, we got off on the wrong foot," he said, positioning himself between me and my truck. "I know things went sideways at the wedding. That was on me. But what if we made this right? We'll pay rent, $500 a month. We'll make it official, signed papers, whatever you want." I looked at him, really looked at him. He'd lost weight since the wedding. His shirt was wrinkled, like he'd slept in it. There were dark circles under his eyes. "You had a chance to behave like human beings," I said. "April 30th. Wait, just listen." I opened my truck door, forcing him to step back. "Move." He moved. I climbed in, started the engine, and backed out of the space. In my rearview mirror, I saw him standing there in the harsh fluorescent light, coffee cup still in, his hand watching me drive away. 18 days left. They hired a lawyer, Marcus Chen, according to the business card. He called me at the office, all professional courtesy and veiled threats about family courts and adverse possession and other legal terms that sounded impressive but meant nothing. "Mr. Chen," I interrupted him mid-sentence, "have you reviewed the property deed?" "I have, but—" "Then you know your clients have no legal standing. I own the property outright. There's no lease agreement. They're tenants at will who have been given proper notice. If you're charging them money to tell them otherwise, that's between you and your conscience." I hung up. The eviction date came and went. April 30th arrived on a Tuesday. I hired a moving company and a locksmith, both present at 8 a.m. I'd given them every chance to leave voluntarily. They'd chosen to stay. The locksmith was changing the locks when they pulled up in Leroy's BMW. They'd been out, probably thinking if they weren't home, somehow the eviction wouldn't happen. "You can't do this," Della screamed, running up the driveway. "This is illegal." "It's completely legal," I said calmly. "You were given 30 days' notice. The notice period has expired. Your belongings are being packed and will be delivered to wherever you designate. We have nowhere to go." "That's not my problem, Della." Leroy tried to push past me to get to the door. The locksmith, a big guy named Marcus, who'd done work for me before, stepped between us. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step back. This is my house." "No," I said, "it's not." They stood in the driveway for 2 hours, Della crying, Leroy making phone calls, both of them trying to figure out what to do. The movers worked around them, carrying out boxes and furniture, loading everything into a storage unit I'd rented and paid for, 1 month storage, prepaid. After that, they were on their own. I stayed until everything was done, until the locks were changed and the keys were in my pocket. Then I got in my truck and drove away, leaving them standing in the driveway of the house that was no longer theirs. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. 10 days later, I put the Westlake property on the market. It was worth close to $1.2 million. The Austin real estate market had exploded in recent years. I priced it competitively and had 3 offers within a week. I accepted one from a nice couple in their 50s. They were relocating from California for the husband's job. They had good financing and wanted a quick close. When Della found out, I don't know how, probably driving by the house and seeing the sold sign, she lost what was left of her mind. She showed up at my office with Leroy, both of them demanding to see me. My assistant, Brenda, tried to turn them away. I could hear the shouting from my office on the 3rd floor. I called building security. "Mike, I have 2 people in the lobby, Della Morgan and Leroy." "Morgan, they are not permitted entry under any circumstances. If they refuse to leave, call the police for trespassing." "Understood, Mr. Clark." They were escorted out. I watched from my window as they argued with Mike in the parking lot, Della gesturing wildly, Leroy looking like he wanted to throw a punch. Mike stayed calm, professional. Eventually, they got in their car and left. That's when the social media campaign started. Della posted on Facebook a long, emotional post about her cruel father who'd thrown her onto the street and sold the family home out from under her. She made it sound like I'd evicted her for no reason, like I was some heartless monster who hated his own daughter. The post went viral in our community. 340 shares, or 127 comments, most of them sympathetic. People I'd known for years were commenting about what a terrible person I was. I didn't respond. I didn't post my own version of events. I just watched the fire burn and waited for it to consume itself. It took 3 days. Tom Henderson, my business partner, called me. "Robert, I saw Della's Facebook post. That's some serious accusation. What's your side?" I told him. "Everything. The envelope, the public humiliation, Leroy's jokes, the way Della screamed at me in front of 150 people. $3 million, Tom said when I finished. $3 million, and she tore you apart in front of everyone." "She did." Long pause. "Robert, I don't blame you one bit, not one bit. You need anything, character reference, whatever, you call me." The same conversation happened 5 more times over the next 3 days. People from my church, my construction industry colleagues, even a couple of Della's old friends who knew me well enough to ask for my side before judging. Every time, I told the truth, and every time, the person took my side. The social media campaign backfired. People started commenting on Della's post with questions. What did you do at the wedding? Why would your father do this out of nowhere? There's got to be more to this story. Della deleted the post. But I wasn't done. I met with Stephen Wright again. This time, the folder I brought contained financial statements instead of property deeds. My will, I said, setting the folder down on his mahogany desk. I need to update it. Stephen opened the folder, scanned the documents I'd brought. You want to remove Della as a beneficiary? Completely. Everything goes to Maya and her children. Della gets nothing. Robert, that's your right. But I have to ask, are you sure? Wills written in anger sometimes lead to regret. This isn't anger, Stephen. This is clarity. Della has shown me exactly who she is. I'm choosing to believe her. He nodded slowly. All right. I'll draw up the paperwork. And I want to sell Clark Construction. Can you find me a buyer? That surprised him. You're retiring. I'm 72 years old. It's time. You've got a good business, solid reputation. I can definitely find interested buyers. Do it. Over the next 3 months, my life simplified. I sold Clark Construction to a younger contractor who'd worked with me for years. Good man. He'd take care of my employees, maintain the company's reputation. The sale netted me $2.4 million after taxes. The Westlake house sold. After paying off the remaining mortgage and the realtor fees, I cleared $1.1 million. See, I was sitting on more money than I'd ever had in my life, and I had no one to share it with. Maya called me one evening in July. Dad, Della reached out to me. She's really struggling. I imagine she is. She wants me to convince you to forgive her, to help them out financially. What did you tell her? I told her no. I told her she did this to herself. Maya's voice was firm. She'd always been the more practical of my 2 daughters. But Dad, I have to ask, are you okay? I'm fine, honey. Because you tore up $3 million in front of 150 people. That's not really a fine thing to do. I laughed. Couldn't help it. No, I suppose it's not. But it felt right at the time. Do you regret it? I thought about that, really thought about it. No, I don't. That money would have enabled them, would have taught them that they can treat people however they want and still get rewarded. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone is consequences. That's very zen, Dad. I've had time to think. We talked for another hour. She told me about her kids, about Marcus's work at the hospital, about their plans to visit over Thanksgiving. She didn't mention Della again, and neither did I. The 4th of July fell on a Friday that year. Austin held its usual celebration at Zilker Park. Music, food trucks, families with children waiting for the evening fireworks. I normally avoided crowds, but something made me go that day. Maybe the desire to do something normal. Maybe the need to prove to myself that I could exist in public without shame. I parked near the main entrance and walked through the crowd. Found a spot near the stage where a local band was setting up. Bought a lemonade from a vendor who charged me $7 for 12 ounces of sugar water. That's when I saw Leroy. He was manning a booth for some tech startup I'd never heard of, handing out flyers to disinterested passers-by. He looked terrible, thinner, older, like life had chewed him up and spit him out. He was wearing khakis and a polo shirt with the company logo on it, the kind of outfit I'd seen him sneer at people for wearing. He saw me at the same moment I saw him. Our eyes met across 20 feet of park grass and celebrating families. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Shock, anger, something that might have been shame. I raised my cup of overpriced lemonade in a mock toast, smiled. Just a small smile, nothing cruel, just acknowledgement. He turned away, started talking very intently to the person at the booth next to him, suddenly fascinated by their conversation. I stood there for another moment, then moved on, watched the band play, ate a taco from one of the trucks. Stayed for the fireworks that evening, the sky exploding in colors over Lady Bird Lake. It was a good day. That night, back at home, I found a text message on my phone. Della's number. She'd managed to text me before I could block it. "Dad, I surrender. We were wrong. Please, give me a chance to make this right. I'll do anything. Just talk to me." I read it 3 times, noted the language. Surrender. Like we'd been at war. Which, I supposed, we had been. My thumb hovered over the reply button for maybe 15 seconds. Then I locked my phone and set it down on the counter. I'd spent 72 years being the responsible one, the caretaker, the person who fixed things and made everything okay for everyone else. Carol's illness, Maya's college expenses, Della's endless drama and needs, employee problems at the company, client emergencies, always fixing, always helping, always giving. Maybe it was time to just stop, to let people experience the consequences of their choices, to let them figure things out on their own. I blocked Della's number and went to bed. 6 days passed in relative peace. I went to work, still tying up final loose ends from the company's sale. Had dinners alone, which I was getting used to. Slept well for the first time in months. On the 7th day, Stephen Wright called. "Robert, your daughter contacted me. She's requesting a mediated conversation with me present as a neutral party. I can facilitate if you're willing." I thought about it. Not long, just a few seconds. "When?" "Whenever you're ready. July 25th, your office, 2 o'clock. I'll arrange it. She comes alone, or not at all. I'll let her know." The days leading up to that meeting passed quietly. I finalized the last of the paperwork for the company's sale. Signed over everything to the new owner. Accepted a check that represented 4 decades of work. I was retired. Truly retired. For the first time since I was 23 years old, I had no job to go to, no employees depending on me, no morning alarm clock dictating my schedule. It felt strange, empty, but also liberating. On July 25th, I arrived at Stephen's office at exactly 2 o'clock. Della was already there, sitting in the conference room with tissues clutched in her hand. No Leroy. She'd followed that instruction at least. Stephen sat at the head of the table with his legal pad, playing mediator. I took the chair across from Della and waited. She started crying immediately. Not just quiet tears, but full-body sobs that shook her shoulders. "I know I hurt you," she managed between gasps. "Leroy was in my ear constantly, saying you didn't fit the wedding aesthetic, that you'd embarrass us. I was weak. I'm not making excuses. You chose those words yourself, Della," I interrupted, keeping my voice level. "Not Leroy. You. When you told me to get out, to leave, that I was ruining everything, those were your words." "I know." Her mascara was smudging, creating dark tracks down her cheeks. "I was horrible. I've been horrible. And I know why you did everything. The eviction, selling the house, all of it. You were right to do it. I just want a chance to prove I can be better, to show you I'm sorry." I looked at her for a long moment. 35 years of memories played through my mind like a film reel. Teaching her to ride a bike in the driveway, one hand on the seat, running alongside her until she got her balance. Helping with algebra homework at the kitchen table, both of us frustrated but determined. Walking her down the aisle at her first wedding. Not the one to Leroy, but the one before. The one that had ended in divorce after 3 years. All of it leading to that moment in the Allen House ballroom. "Della," I said finally, "I raised you for 35 years, fed you, clothed you, paid for your education, supported you through a divorce. After your mother died, I gave you a house worth over $1 million, asking nothing in return. All I wanted was basic respect. At your wedding, you showed me I'm nothing to you." "Dad, please!" "Now you're crying. Not because you hurt me. You're crying because you lost access to money." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "That's not—" "Isn't it?" I leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, when's the last time you called me just to talk? To ask how I was doing? Not to ask for money or help with something, just to talk?" Silence. She opened her mouth, closed it, Opened it again. Nothing came out. That's what I thought. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "I believe you're sorry. I don't believe you'd change if I gave you another chance." "I would! I swear I would." "You said that after your first divorce. Remember? You promised you'd learned your lesson about choosing men, about not being so focused on status and appearances, and then you married Leroy." More tears. She was making small, hiccuping sounds now, like a child. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You're going to leave this office. You're going to build your own life, get your own money, figure out who you are without my support propping you up. And maybe, in a few years, if you've actually changed and not just said the words, we can talk again." "A few years?" Her voice cracked. "Dad, I can't go years without talking to you." "You'll survive. You're tougher than you think. You just never had to be tough before because I was always there to catch you." I stood up. Stephen looked between us, clearly uncomfortable but saying nothing. This was our family business, and he knew better than to interfere. "Goodbye, Della." "Dad, wait." But I was already walking out. Through the conference room door, through the lobby with its leather furniture and law books, out into the bright Texas sunshine. I felt lighter than I had in years. That was 3 years ago. I'm 75 now. I live in a smaller house in a quiet neighborhood, something more manageable than the old place. I travel when I want to. Took a trip to Ireland last year, Scotland the year before that. I volunteer at a community center, teaching basic construction skills to kids who want to learn a trade. Maya visits with her family every few months. Her kids call me Grandpa and actually mean it. They're good kids, respectful, kind. The kind of grandchildren who write thank you notes without being reminded. Della and I have spoken exactly twice in 3 years. Both times brief, awkward conversations where she tried to rebuild what was broken and I politely declined. The last time, about 6 months ago, she'd actually made progress. She and Leroy had divorced. She was working a better job. She'd been in therapy for over a year. "I'm not asking for money," she said, "or for you to change your will back. I miss my dad." "I miss my daughter too," I told her. "But I'm not sure we're talking about the same person." She cried, asked if there was anything she could do to fix this. "Live your life," I said. "Learn from your mistakes. Become someone your mother would be proud of. If you do that, really do it, maybe we'll find our way back to each other. But it has to be real, Della. Not performance, not manipulation. Real change." "How will you know if it's real?" "I guess we'll both find out." We haven't spoken since. But I think about her sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet. I wonder if she's actually changing or just treading water, waiting for me to give in. I wonder if I'm being too harsh, too unforgiving. But then I remember that moment at her wedding. The way she looked at me. The way she told me to leave. The way she sat there and let Leroy tear me apart for entertainment. And I remember why I tore up that check. Some lessons can only be learned the hard way. Some people only grow when they're forced to. And sometimes, the most loving thing a parent can do is let their child fall and not catch them. I hope she figures it out. I really do. But that's her journey now, not mine. I did my part. I raised her. I gave her every advantage. I loved her with everything I had. What she does with that now is up to her. As for the $3 million, I split it between various charities. Scholarships for kids from low-income families who want to learn trades, funding for cancer research in Carol's name, donations to the food bank where I volunteer. It did a lot more good there than it ever would have done enabling my daughter's bad choices. And you know what? I sleep just fine at night, better than I have in years.